Tidbits from TNT, Sunday morning, February 16, 2025. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com website and become our supporter on Patreon. Tishwash. Central Bank announces details of its meetings with the Treasury and the Federal Reserve. The central bank announced the end of the first quarterly meetings for the year 2025 with the U.S. Treasury and the U.S. Federal Reserve, which were held in Dubai, United Arab Emirates with the participation of international auditing and consulting firms, EY, K2 Integrity, Oliver Wyman. The meetings culminated in praise for the steps taken by the Central Bank of Iraq and the Iraqi government in reforming the banking sector, the most important of which were the development of the US dollar cash distribution system in Iraq, which they considered the most controlled and monitored system in the world, which limits manipulation and smuggling of the US dollar. The qualitative shift in foreign transfer operations and the steps taken by the Central Bank of Iraq to address the risks arising from these operations, which have now risen to the levels of transfer operations carried out by international banks. The consulting firms, EY and Oliver Wyman, reviewed the plans to reform and upgrade the public and private banking sectors in line with international standards and to facilitate the involvement of Iraqi banks in the international financial relations network. Since the operations carried out by banks operating in Iraq depend largely on the trust of international correspondent banks in the Iraqi banking sector, we emphasize the need to ensure that the official channels of this bank are adopted to know the latest news, and not to transmit incorrect news such as some Iraqi banks being subject to international sanctions and others. Tishwash. Al-Sudani discusses with Airbus Aircraft Company modernizing the air fleet. Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani confirmed to Airbus today, Saturday, the acceleration of the implementation of the contract to equip Iraq with combat helicopters. Al-Sudani's media office stated in a statement received by MIL that the latter received, at his residence in Munich, the executive vice president of Airbus Helicopters, Stefan Thome. And during the meeting, discussions were held on developing joint cooperation in the fields of training, maintenance and modernization of the air fleet. In light of the bilateral contract to equip Iraq with combat helicopters, with an emphasis on accelerating the procedures for implementing the terms of the contract. According to the statement, al-Sudani stressed the government's keenness and efforts to cooperate and partner with reputable international companies, and to provide all the necessary facilities to provide the appropriate ground for their work in Iraq. Tishwash. Al-Sudani discusses with an American senator enhancing cooperation between Iraq and the United States. Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani discussed, today, Saturday, with an American senator enhancing cooperation between Iraq and the United States. A statement from al-Sudani's office, received by MIL, stated that the latter received at his residence in Munich the U.S. Senator from the Democratic Party, Senator Alyssa Stotkin. The statement added, the meeting discussed relations and ways to enhance cooperation between Iraq and the United States in various fields in light of the joint agreements and understandings, for a long-term strategic relationship that serves the interests of both parties. For her part, Senator Stotkin affirmed her country's support for Iraq, its aspirations, and its positions aimed at achieving security and stability in the region, in a way that secures the interests of the countries of the region and enhances sustainable stability. Tishwash. Advisor to the Prime Minister. The principle of partnership with the private sector will strengthen the digital bond in its best form. Advisor to the Prime Minister for Financial Affairs, Mazhar Mohammed Saleh, confirmed today, Sunday, that the principle of partnership between the state and the private sector will strengthen the digital bond in its best form, indicating that digital industrial licenses facilitate obtaining industrial investment licenses through electronic platforms. And he stressed that entering into electronic governance will provide a high level of disclosure and transparency and a high level of information for the flow of trademarks. Saleh said, in an interview with the Iraqi news agency, followed by Al-Iqtisad News, that the Iraqi government seeks, according to the government program, to transform the processes of registering trademarks through digital platforms that facilitate the registration and protection of their trademarks for merchants and industrialists according to high governance and speed. In addition to digital industrial licenses that lead to facilitating the obtaining of industrial investment licenses through electronic platforms. He added, industrial analysis and data services are a mechanism for providing industrial data and statistics via digital systems to facilitate decision-making related to the industry, as well as digital training and consulting, development and capacity building, such as organizing training courses on digital transformation tools and participating in online consulting programs at the same time. Saleh explained that, entering into e-governance will provide a high level of disclosure and transparency, and a high level of information for the flow of important brands that are consistent with the development of industrial development activity in the country, and interaction with technology sources in the world reflected by brands of global companies that are important in technological development. Noting that, this in turn leads to accelerating the encouragement of research and development projects to enhance national industrial innovation in a renewed digital industrial age for Iraq. He stressed that, the principle of partnership between the state and the private sector will strengthen the digital bond in its best form. Explaining that, the objectives of the private sector development strategy also aim to have its contribution to the gross domestic product reach approximately 53% within a decade instead of its current status of 37% through diversifying investment in fields with industry at the forefront to generate diverse national production, which will lead to accelerating the reduction of unemployment to 1 decimal place and making it at the natural limit and not exceeding 4% of the total workforce. He pointed out that, the industrial cities that will be built on the development path will represent the highest types of industrial modernization by taking advantage of the digital platforms that are being built for this purpose to accelerate obtaining the relevant industrial and commercial licenses. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com website and become our supporter on Patreon. Source: dinarrecaps.com